What in the seven hells are you doing wrapped around my navigation console? Reese's voice cracked, echoing slightly in the cramped cockpit of the rust bucket. His ship wasn't exactly spacious, but finding an alien woman, a glowing, vaguely iridescent alien woman with far too many limbs and a disconcertingly prehensile tail currently coiled around the primary flight stick, was new, even for him. Her skin shifted in slow pulses of cyan and deep violet, mesmerizing and utterly terrifying. She tilted her head, large, obsidian eyes blinking slowly. A low, melodic hum vibrated in the air, seemingly emanating from her. Her tail tightened its grip on the stick, making the worn plastic creak. She extended a three-fingered hand, talons looking deceptively delicate, towards his face. He flinched back against the bulkhead, heart hammering against his ribs. "Don't touch me. Back away from the controls." Slowly. Her lips, thin and a shade darker than her skin, pulled back in something that might have been a smile, revealing pointed teeth. The hum intensified, and he felt it resonate in his own chest, a weird, invasive thrum. "Territory," she purred, the sound layered, like multiple voices speaking at once. Her gaze flicked down to where her tail cinched the flight stick, then back to him. "Mine," Reese stared. "Okay, galactic standard was spotty, but mine usually meant mine." "That's my ship," he gritted out. "My console, my flight stick, not yours." She uncoiled slightly from the console, shifting her weight. She was taller than he'd first thought, lean muscle under that shimmering skin. Another limb, a leg, an arm, unfurled from behind her, bracing against the co-pilot's seat. The tail remained possessively looped around the stick. "Ship," she acknowledged, the hum softening slightly. She tapped a claw against the console screen, which flickered erratically. "Safe, warm." Then she looked directly at him, those dark eyes seeming to pierce right through his resolve. "You, also mine," his breath hitched. "I am not yours." He pushed off the wall, trying to project an authority he absolutely did not feel. "I don't know how you got on my ship, lady, but stowaway privileges do not include claiming the pilot." Her head tilted again, a predator's curiosity in the movement. The violet light in her skin deepened, swirling like ink in water. "Not stowaway. Refuge." The hum spiked again, and this time he felt a dizzying wave of something. Panic. Not his own, hers. It washed over him, disorienting. "Refuge from what?" he demanded, shaking his head to clear it. She gestured vaguely towards the viewport, where only the star-strewn blackness of deep space was visible. "Hunters." The word was sharp, cutting through the hum. Her tail twitched nervously around the stick. "They follow," Reese swore under his breath. "Hunters." That usually meant slavers, or worse, specialized collectors, and they were following her, which meant they were probably following him now too. Great, just stellar. "Okay," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "Okay, hunters, bad, we agree. Now how about you let go of my flight controls so I can, fly us away from said hunters?" She considered this, her strange eyes narrowed. The glow on her skin flickered, shifting towards a warmer, golden hue around her neck and shoulders. "You fly." "Yes, I fly. It's my job, my ship." He gestured wildly around the cockpit. "See the pilot's seat? That's where I sit. See the controls you're strangling? I need those." Her tail slowly, reluctantly unspooled from the flight stick. It didn't retreat far, instead hovering in the air between them, the tip twitching like a nervous cat's. The golden light intensified, pulsing softly. "Fly," she conceded. The hum was back, lower this time, almost questioning. She shifted, making room for him, but didn't move away. She stayed pressed against the console array, her presence filling the small space, radiating heat and that weird, thrumming resonance. He squeezed past her, hyper-aware of the smooth, cool feel of her skin brushing against his arm, the faint, spicy scent that clung to her. It wasn't unpleasant. Annoyingly. He dropped into the pilot's seat, hands automatically going to the controls. Her tail instantly wrapped around his waist. He froze, every muscle tensing. Her tail, surprisingly strong, coiled snugly around his middle, the tip resting possessively against his hip bone. He could feel the fine, almost imperceptible texture of scales, cool against the thin fabric of his flight suit. "Get," he choked out, "your tail off me." The melodic hum vibrated directly against his side now, sending shivers down his spine. The golden glow on her skin intensified, casting warm shadows across the cockpit. "Claiming," she murmured, her voice close to his ear. He could feel her breath, warmer than expected, ghosting over his neck. Territory safe. I am not territory, he hissed, trying to pry the damn thing off without actually grabbing the unsettlingly muscular appendage. It tightened its grip slightly, a clear warning. Pilot needs territory safe, she insisted. The resonance pulsed, and this time it felt soothing, protective. It was messing with his head. He needed to focus. Hunters, flying. Staying alive. Look, he said, trying a different tack, keeping his voice low and steady despite the internal screaming. Call me Reese. What do I call you? Her obsidian eyes studied his profile. The glow on her skin softened, shifting back towards violet and cyan, though the gold lingered around her throat. Kalen. The name sounded like chimes caught in a breeze. Okay, Kalen, nice to meet you under bizarre circumstances. Now, Kalen, I appreciate the sentiment really, but the tale, it's distracting. And possessive, and weird. Can we maybe establish some personal space boundaries? Kalen tilted her head, the movement fluid and serpentine. Space. She looked around the cramped cockpit. Small space. Her tail gave a gentle squeeze. Good space together. He groaned, dropping his head back against the headrest for a brief second before snapping upright again. Arguing was getting him nowhere. Flying was the priority. He gripped the freed flight stick, trying to ignore the alien appendage wrapped around his waist like a particularly affectionate python. Right. Flying. Where did you last see these hunters? Kalen shifted beside him, leaning closer to peer at the nav display. Her shoulder brushed his, and the contact sent another jolt, a mix of alarm and something else he refused to identify through him. Her scent, spicy and strangely metallic, filled his nostrils. Vector 7 Gamma 9, she said, tapping a claw precisely on the star chart. Fast ships, sharp teeth, great, slavers with heavily armed vessel, just his luck. He inputted the coordinates, checking his own sensor logs. Sure enough, faint energy signatures were pinging at the edge of detection range, closing faster than he liked. Damn it, they're closing. He pushed the throttle forward, the rust bucket's engines whining in protest as they strained for more speed. The ship lurched, and Kalen instinctively braced herself against his seat, her hand landing on his shoulder. Her touch was cool, the resonance humming through the contact point. It wasn't unpleasant. He hated that it wasn't unpleasant. Hold on, he muttered, banking the ship hard to starboard, aiming for a nearby asteroid field. Maybe they could lose them in the debris. Kalen made a low sound, a trill of something that might have been excitement or approval. Her tail flexed around his waist, a solid, grounding presence despite the absurdity. Fast, she approved. Good pilot. He grunted, focusing on weaving through the first few chunks of rock and ice. This was going to be tight, and he was doing it with an alien boa constrictor wrapped around him. Wonderful. The ship shuddered as a piece of debris scraped along the hull. Kalen hissed softly, her claws tightening momentarily on his shoulder. The glow on her skin flickered erratically, pulses of red joining the violet and cyan. Fear, anger, he couldn't tell, but the resonance spiked, sharp and uncomfortable in his chest. Easy, he said, glancing at her. Just a little turbulence. Her eyes were fixed on the swirling debris field outside the viewport. They will follow. Yeah, well, let's make it difficult for them. He executed a tight barrel roll, dodging a larger asteroid. Kalen's grip remained steady, her body moving with the ship, surprisingly balanced. Her tail was a constant pressure, a weird anchor in the chaos. He was starting to get used to it, which was possibly the most alarming thing of all. This alien woman, Kalen, was trouble. Beautiful, terrifying, glow-in-the-dark trouble with boundary issues, and a tail currently claiming him as furniture. And somehow, he had a feeling escaping the hunters was only the first problem she'd brought aboard. Weaving through the asteroid field bought them time, but the rust bucket wasn't built for sustained sprints or nimble evasion. Alarms started blaring, proximity warnings, a minor hull integrity breach on the starboard side, something about the atmospheric recycler working overtime, probably because of the extra non-human passenger breathing his air. Status? Kalen asked, her voice tight. Her glow was still flickering, mostly violet with flashes of warning red near her temples. Reese scanned the readouts, sweat beading on his forehead. We lost them for now, but the ship took a few hits. Nothing critical, but we need to find somewhere to lie low and make repairs. He scrubbed a hand over his face, acutely aware of her tail still firmly in place. And you need to tell me exactly who these hunters are and why they want you. Kaelin straightened up, pulling her hand from his shoulder but leaving the tail. She crossed her arms, the upper pair, anyway, over her chest. The movement pulled the shimmering fabric of her simple tunic taut over lean muscle. "Zelosian," she said, the word clipped. "They hunt my kind, for skin, for resonance." Rhys felt a chill despite the cockpit's rising temperature. Hunted for parts, that was grim even by outer rim standards. "Your resonance, this humming thing you do," she nodded curtly. "Life force, connection, they drain it." Her glow dimmed for a moment, the violet turning muddy before flaring back. "Weakens us, kills us." Her gaze was distant, haunted. "Why you specifically? Are you important?" Kaelin hesitated, her eyes flicking towards him, then away. The golden hue reappeared around her throat, pulsing faintly. "I resisted, fought back, escaped a pairing." Rhys raised an eyebrow. "Pairing, like marriage, bonding," she corrected, the word heavy. "Forced, unwanted, I carry something they desire." She touched her own chest lightly. "A lineage marker, royal blood, a specific genetic trait." Whatever it was, it made her a high-value target. And now, by association, him too. He sighed, running diagnostics on the damaged systems. "Okay, so bounty hunters or specialized collectors, probably well-funded if they're after specific genetic markers. Great, we need a hideout, somewhere off the main trade lanes." He zoomed in on the nav chart, highlighting a small, unlisted moon orbiting a gas giant a few jumps away. PX-47b. "Uninhabited, dense M interference from the giant should mask our signature while I patch the hull." Kaelin studied the chart, her expression unreadable. "Safe. Safer than out here," he grunted, plotting the jump sequence. "But it'll take a few hours to get there. In the meantime," he looked pointedly at the appendage still wrapped around him, "can we renegotiate the territory situation? I need to move around." Kaelin considered him, her head tilted. The chaotic lights on her skin stabilized, settling into a calmer pattern of swirling cyan and deep blue. "You stay." It wasn't quite a question. "Stay on the ship. Where else would I go?" "Stay with Kaelin," he blinked. "What? No, I mean yes, we're stuck together until we fix the ship and figure out how to ditch your fan club, but that's it. Temporary alliance." Her eyes narrowed slightly, the blue deepening. The resonance in his chest pulsed, disappointment, possessiveness again. It was like trying to read static. "Alliance," she repeated slowly, testing the word. Her tail loosened almost imperceptibly. "Acceptable for now, progress, maybe." He initiated the jump sequence. The stars outside elongated into streaks of light, then collapsed into the swirling vortex of hyperspace. The ship shuddered, settling into the non-space transit. The sudden silence after the tension of the chase felt heavy. Kaelin finally uncoiled her tail from his waist. She stretched, limbs unfolding with unsettling grace in the confined space. The movement pulled her tunic tight again, outlining a form that was distinctly female, utterly alien and annoyingly captivating. She turned, facing him fully, her obsidian eyes locking onto his. "Repairs require tools," she stated. "Show Kaelin." Rhys hesitated. Letting her wander, his ship felt unwise, but keeping her cooped up in the cockpit with him while he was trying to concentrate also seemed like a bad idea. Besides, she might actually be useful. She seemed capable. "All right, but you touch nothing without asking, got it?" Her lips curved in that sharp-toothed smile again. "Kaelin understands boundaries," he snorted. "Sure you do." He unstrapped himself and stood up, stretching his own cramped muscles. "Cargo bay has the repair kits. Follow me, and keep your hands and tail to yourself." The cargo bay was cluttered but organized chaos. Spare parts, emergency supplies, crates of salvaged tech Rhys hadn't gotten around to sorting yet. Kaelin moved through it with a quiet, predatory grace, her large eyes scanning everything. Her tail held slightly off the floor, twitching occasionally as she took in the new environment. Her skin glowed softly in the dimmer light, shifting blues and violets painting faint colors on the metal crates. She stopped by a workbench littered with disassembled droid parts. "Fix?" she asked, pointing a clawed finger at a damaged motivator unit. "Trying to," Rhys grumbled, pulling out a large case containing the hull patching kit. "Bought it cheap, turned out to be mostly junk." Kaelin picked up a small diagnostic tool Rhys hadn't been able to get working. She turned it over in her hands, her long fingers tracing the seams. A faint golden glow emanated from her fingertips and the tool suddenly whirred to life, projecting a tiny schematic into the air. Reese stared. "How did you do that?" Kalen looked up, blinking slowly. "Resonance, energy transfer, small push." She offered the activated tool to him. "Useful?" He took it cautiously. It felt warm. Yeah, very, thanks." He pocketed the tool, feeling off balance again. She wasn't just some damsel in distress. She had abilities. Useful, potentially dangerous abilities. "Right, hull patch." He hefted the kit. "Need to suit up and go EVA. You stay inside. Monitor internal pressure and comms. Can you handle that?" She nodded, her attention already drifting to a section of the hull plating that glowed faintly red on the internal scanner display, the breach. "I watch." "Good." He headed towards the airlock, grabbing an environment suit off the rack. As he started pulling it on, he felt her gaze on him. He glanced back. Kalen was watching him intently, her head tilted, that unnerving resonant hum barely audible. Her glow seemed brighter, concentrated. It made him feel exposed. He fumbled with the suit's seals, suddenly clumsy. "Something wrong?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Human form," she murmured, her eyes tracing the lines of the suit as he fastened it. "Fragile." "Compared to what exactly?" he retorted, pulling the helmet on. "Compared to someone who gets hunted for their skin." She didn't react to the barb, her expression remaining thoughtful, almost analytical. "Skin repairs," she noted. "Yours does not glow." "Nope, just gets sunburned. Now watch the monitors." He cycled the airlock, the outer door hissing open to the stardusted void. He tethered himself securely and pushed off, maneuvering towards the damaged section with practiced ease. The cold of space seeped through the suit, a familiar sensation. Patching the hull was routine work, tedious but necessary. Welding plates, sealing microfractures, checking the integrity. As he worked, he couldn't shake the image of Kalen watching him, her glowing skin and resonant hum. Fragile, maybe, but humans were resilient bastards. They didn't have glowing skin or resonance or prehensile tails, but they got by. They built ships like the Rust Bucket, scratched out livings on the fringes, and mostly tried to avoid aliens who claimed them as territory. He finished the patch, signaling Kalen via the suit comm. "Patch complete." "How's it look from inside?" Seal holding. Pressure stable, her voice came back, the slight distortion of the comm failing to mask the underlying resonance. "Good work, Reese." He felt a ridiculous flicker of pride. "Yeah, well, it's my ship." He started pulling himself back towards the airlock. "Our ship," she corrected softly. He sighed inside his helmet. This was going to be a long trip. Back inside, Chinese letter SUITED and grimy, he found Kalen exactly where he'd left her, still watching the monitor displaying the now sealed hull section. She turned as he entered the cargo bay, the soft glow of her skin illuminating her face. "Repairs done," he said unnecessarily. "We should be good to stay here for a standard day or so, let the trail go cold." Kalen nodded slowly. "Good, rest now." "Yeah, maybe." He was suddenly exhausted. Adrenaline crash. "I need a shower and some food." He started towards the small galley and fresher unit tucked behind the cargo bay. "You need anything?" She considered this, her obsidian eyes sweeping over him again. The golden light around her throat pulsed gently. "Sustenance, yes," and she hesitated, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "Proximity." He stopped, hand on the galley doorway. "Proximity. Close," she clarified, gesturing vaguely between them. "Resonance stabilizes better." "With contact." "Oh, hell no." "Look, Kalen, the tail thing was weird enough. We're not huddling." Her expression fell slightly, the glow dimming. "Not huddling," she repeated, testing the unfamiliar word. "But nearby," he sighed. She looked almost crestfallen. And despite everything, he didn't want her resonance going haywire and destabilizing something vital, like the newly patched hull. "Fine, nearby. You can take the crash couch in the cargo bay. I'll be in my bunk, which is through there." He pointed towards the cockpit access. "Close enough." Her glow brightened considerably. "Acceptable." She gave that sharp-toothed smile again, but this time it seemed less predatory, almost pleased. "Good proximity, Reese." He just shook his head and retreated towards the fresher, needing synthale and distance more than food. Proximity. Great. His life had officially gone off the rails and landed in weird alien territory. Literally. Reese managed a lukewarm shower and choked down a nutrient bar that tasted vaguely of recycled protein. He felt marginally more human, but the exhaustion lingered, overlaid with a persistent hum of anxiety, or maybe that was just Kalen's resonance seeping through the bulkhead. He collapsed onto his narrow bunk, which was little more than a shelf built into the wall behind the cockpit. He could hear faint movements from the cargo bay, the soft scrape of Kalen's claws on the deck plating, the almost subsonic thrum of her presence. Nearby, too nearby. He closed his eyes, trying to force himself to sleep. Rest was critical, but his mind kept replaying the image of her wrapped around the console, the feel of her tail around his waist, the intensity in her dark eyes. She was like nothing he'd ever encountered. Dangerous, unpredictable, strangely alluring in her utter alienness. And apparently she needed proximity. What did that even mean for her species? Was it a comfort thing, a biological necessity, or just another way to claim territory? A soft scratching sound came from the doorway connecting the cockpit area to the cargo bay. Reese's eyes snapped open. Kalen stood silhouetted against the faint light spilling from the bay, her tall frame filling the opening. Her glow was subdued, mostly a deep, calm blue. "Reese," she whispered, her layered voice softer than usual. "What?" he grumbled, sitting up. "Problem." "No problem." She stepped fully into the small space, her tail trailing behind her. The area barely fit his bunk and a small storage locker. With her in it, it felt impossibly crowded. "Just proximity check." He scrubbed a hand over his face. "Seriously, I'm trying to sleep." "Sleep requires safety," she stated as if it were obvious. She took another step closer, stopping beside his bunk. She looked down at him, her expression unreadable in the dim light, but the resonance emanating from her felt, searching, tentative. "Cargo couch cold." "It's standard synth fiber, it's fine. My people rest warm together." She reached out, her three-fingered hand hovering over his arm. He flinched instinctively. "Don't." Her hand stopped, fingers slightly curled. The blue light on her skin flickered. "Touch stabilizes resonance," she explained quietly. "Prevents static." Static. Emotional interference, anxiety, fear. Her gaze was direct. "Yours is loud," Reese bristled. "I'm not broadcasting anything." "You are," she insisted softly. "To me. Resonance connects, feel apprehension, weariness." Beneath that she paused, tilting her head. "Loneliness." He scoffed, turning away, pulling the thin blanket higher. "You're imagining things. Go back to the couch, Kalen." She didn't move. He could feel her presence beside him, radiating that strange energy. The air felt thick with it. After a long moment she sighed, a sound like wind chimes. "If safety is compromised, call Kalen." She turned and slipped back out of the room as silently as she'd entered. Reese let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Loneliness. What the hell did she know? He was fine alone, preferred it. Less complicated. Less dangerous. But as he lay there in the dark, the faint hum of her presence still palpable through the wall, he couldn't entirely dismiss her words. Or the unsettling feeling that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't entirely wrong. Sleep remained elusive. He kept thinking about the hunters, about Kalen's resilience, her strange abilities, the vulnerability he'd glimpsed beneath the dominant exterior. And damn it, the way her skin glowed was distractingly beautiful. He punched his pillow. This was ridiculous. She was an alien who'd hijacked his ship and possibly his life, who communicated through weird vibes and had a possessive tail. Attraction was not supposed to be on the menu. Yet, when she'd stood beside his bunk, close enough to touch, there had been a pull, a current of something electric between them. He finally drifted into an uneasy sleep filled with swirling colors, resonant hums, and the feeling of a tail wrapped securely around his waist. He woke abruptly to a loud clang from the cargo bay, followed by an exasperated hiss that was definitely Kalen. Reese was out of his bunk in a second, grabbing the stun baton he kept clipped beside the door. He burst into the cargo bay, weapon raised, expecting hunters or pirates or worse. Instead, he found Kalen tangled up in a roll of thermal insulation sheeting, batting at it futilely with one hand while trying to detangle her tail from a coil of power conduit she'd apparently knocked off a shelf. Her skin was flashing a frustrated pinkish-orange. "Problem?" he asked dryly, lowering the baton. Kalen froze, her large eyes snapping towards him. She hissed again, pulling her tail free with a sharp tug that sent the conduit clattering to the floor. "Equipment." Poorly secured, she grumbled, yanking the insulation sheeting off her shoulder. Maybe equipment wouldn't fall if giant aliens weren't prowling around my cargo bay in the dark, Reese retorted, leaning against the doorframe. A corner of his mouth twitched. Seeing her flustered and slightly clumsy was amusing, disarming even. Kaelin straightened up, smoothing her tunic though her glow remained stubbornly orange around the edges. Was exploring, understanding territory. My territory, he reminded her, which you seem determined to rearrange. She stepped over the discarded insulation, moving closer. The orange faded, replaced by swirling patterns of cyan and a warmer gold, especially near her hands. Shared territory, she corrected softly. The resonant hum intensified, washing over him. This time it felt, deliberately questioning, teasing. He found himself holding her gaze, the cluttered cargo bay fading into the background. The air crackled with that strange energy again. So, he said, trying to break the sudden tension, gesturing vaguely at the mess. Find anything interesting in your explorations, besides the floor, her lips curved into that sharp smile. Found limits of human storage solutions. She took another step, closing the distance between them until only arm's length separated them. Her height meant he had to tilt his head back slightly to meet her eyes. Found pilot sleeps lightly. Occupational hazard, he deflected, hyper-aware of her proximity, the faint, spicy scent of her skin, the warmth radiating from her. Her glow seemed to pulse in time with his own heartbeat, or maybe he was just imagining things. You require sustenance, she asked, her voice dropping into that lower, layered register that sent shivers down his spine. Replication cycle complete. Yeah, food sounds good. Anything to put some distance between them, break this charged silence. He turned towards the galley, but her hand darted out, cool fingers closing gently around his wrist. He froze. Her touch sent a jolt through him, not unpleasant but startlingly intimate. The resonance spiked, a pure, clear note that vibrated up his arm and settled deep in his chest. Her skin where she touched him flared with brilliant gold light. "Reese," she murmured, her thumb stroking lightly over his pulse point. Her eyes searched his face. "Your resonance shifts when Kaelin is near." He swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. "Engine interference," he lied badly. "Ship's old." She tilted her head, her smile widening slightly, showing the tips of those pointed teeth. "Kaelin feels no engines." She leaned in fractionally closer, her breath warm against his cheek. "Feels pilot." Before he could process that, or pull away, or do anything remotely sensible, she released his wrist and stepped back, turning towards the nutrient dispenser unit. "Standard nutrient paste?" asked, her tone abruptly casual, though the golden light still lingered on her fingertips. Reese stared at the spot on his wrist where she'd touched him, his skin tingling. He felt dizzy, disoriented, like the ship's artificial gravity had momentarily failed. He needed to get a grip. This alien was playing games with him, messing with his head using her weird vibe control, and the worst part, he wasn't entirely sure he wanted her to stop. "Yeah," he managed, clearing his throat. "Paste is fine." As she operated the dispenser, her tail swayed gently behind her, the tip brushing against his leg. Accidental, or another territorial marker. With Kaelin, he was rapidly learning, it was impossible to tell. And that uncertainty, that chaotic mix of danger and allure, was starting to feel addictive. They ate in relative silence, perched on crates in the cargo bay. The nutrient paste tasted like synth cardboard as usual, but Reese barely noticed. His awareness was entirely focused on Kaelin. The way she moved, the subtle shifts of light on her skin, the low hum of her resonance that seemed to thrum just beneath the surface of the ship's ambient noise. She ate neatly, efficiently, her strange, three-fingered hands surprisingly dexterous. Occasionally, her obsidian eyes would flick up to meet his, holding his gaze for a beat too long before returning to her food. The silence wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't entirely uncomfortable either. It was charged, filled with unspoken questions and simmering tension. "So," Reese said finally, needing to break it. "Zalosians, you guys always this touchy?" Kaelin looked up, tilting her head. "Touch is communication, connection, validation of presence." "Right, and wrapping your tail around someone is." "Claiming," she said simply, without hesitation. "Statement of intent, protection, bond initiation." Reese choked on his paste. "Bond initiation, whoa, hang on, we agreed temporary alliance." Her glow flickered, violet swirling through the dominant blue. Tail was instinct, response to threat and proximity. She looked down at her hands. Your resonance called to it. My resonance doesn't call anything, he insisted, though less forcefully than before. Her revelation about bond initiation had thrown him. This was way more complicated than simple possessiveness. It does, she countered softly. Loneliness sings loudly in the void, Reese, even to alien ears. She met his gaze again, her expression serious. Kalen hears. He looked away, unable to hold that intense stare. Was he really that transparent, or was her resonance-reading ability just that sensitive? Whatever, doesn't matter. Once the ship is fully checked out and your hunter friends have hopefully lost the scent, we part ways. You find your people, I find a cargo run that doesn't involve being hunted or claimed. Kalen finished her paste, setting the empty container aside with deliberate care. And if hunters find us first, then we fight or run, preferably run. And if running requires close cooperation, her gaze was pointed. He knew what she meant. The confined space, the need for trust, the reliance on each other. It was a crucible designed to force intimacy. We cooperate, he said firmly. Doesn't mean initiation ceremonies or tail cuddling. She rose to her feet in one fluid motion, towering over him slightly as he remained seated on the crate. The blue of her skin deepened, swirling with purpose. Boundaries noted, she said, her voice regaining its melodic layers. But resonance, she tapped her chest lightly, does not negotiate. She turned and walked towards the cockpit, her tail swaying rhythmically. Monitoring ship systems. Alert Kalen to anomalies. Reese watched her go, a frustrated sigh escaping him. Boundaries noted. She hadn't respected a single boundary since she appeared on his ship. Yet bond initiation, the concept was terrifying. Intimate. Permanent, probably, knowing his luck. He should be running screaming in the other direction, plotting how to dump her at the nearest marginally reputable spaceport. But the thought of her facing those hunters alone, the image of her resonance being drained, it settled uneasily in his gut. And the memory of her touch, that jolt of connection, the way his own body seemed to react to her presence, he pushed himself off the crate. Fine, temporary alliance, close cooperation, but he needed to be clear. Absolutely, unequivocally clear. He strode towards the cockpit, resolve hardening. He found her seated in the co-pilot's chair, one hand resting lightly on the console, her gaze fixed on the star chart display. Her glow was calm, a gentle oceanic blue. Kalen, he began, stopping beside her chair. She turned her head, looking up at him. Yes, Reese. About this bonding thing, he said, keeping his voice firm. My species, we don't do instant bonds. It takes time, shared experience, trust. It's not just instinct and proximity and tails. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. The resonance hum deepened, vibrating pleasantly in the small space. Time, she repeated. Shared experience, trust. She reached out slowly this time, her intention clear. Her cool fingers brushed against the back of his hand where it rested on the pilot's seat. Golden light flared at the point of contact, warmer this time, spreading up his arm like a blush. Kalen understands. Her eyes held his, dark and deep. We have time. And just like that, his resolve melted. The air thickened again, charged with an intensity that stole his breath. Her touch wasn't demanding this time, it was an offering, an invitation. He didn't pull away, he couldn't. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic counterpoint to the steady thrum of her resonance. Time, shared experience, trust. Suddenly, the temporary part of their alliance felt very fragile indeed. The next cycle passed in a tense state of détente. Reese ran deep diagnostics, confirming the hull patch was solid and tweaking the engine efficiency. Kalen proved surprisingly adept with the ship systems, her ability to push energy into reluctant components saving him hours of work. She moved around him with deliberate care, respecting his space mostly. But the awareness between them was a palpable thing. Glances held too long, accidental brushes that sent sparks arcing across his skin. The constant, low thrum of her resonance, a background hum that was becoming increasingly familiar, disturbingly comforting. Reese found himself watching her when she wasn't looking. The way light caught the iridescent hints in her skin, the fluid grace of her movements, even the expressiveness of her tail, which coiled contentedly when she was focused on a task or twitched with irritation when a system proved stubborn. He was learning to read the shifts in her glow: cyan for calm concentration, violet for curiosity or concern, gold for connection, pleasure. That one still made him uneasy. He caught her watching him too, her obsidian eyes intense, analytical, yet holding a flicker of something softer he couldn't quite name. They talked, cautiously at first. He asked about Xylos, her world, carefully avoiding the topic of the forced bonding. She described cities woven from living crystal, resonant choirs that shaped thought, skis perpetually lit by twin emerald suns. It sounded beautiful, ethereal, utterly unlike the gritty reality of his life. She, in turn, asked about Earth, about human customs, her curiosity boundless and occasionally leading to hilariously awkward misunderstandings about figures of speech or social nuances. "This pulling your leg?" she inquired one cycle evening, head tilted as they shared another meal of paste. "It involves physical detachment of the limb." Reese choked back a laugh. No, it means teasing, joking." Her glow shifted to a thoughtful violet. "Ah, deception for amusement." "Well, not exactly deception." He tried to explain: humor, sarcasm, banter. She listened intently, her resonant hum vibrating with concentration. Later, while checking the sensor logs, he muttered, "This piece of junk relay is going to be the death of me." Kalen appeared silently beside him. "You wish for Kalen to assist its demise?" she asked, flexing her claws slightly. He stared at her serious expression, then burst out laughing. "No, Kalen, no, it's just an expression. It means it's frustrating." A slow smile spread across her face, the sharp-toothed one that still sent a shiver down his spine, but now felt less threatening, more playful. "Human expressions are inefficient." "Tell me about it," he grinned back, caught off guard by the easy camaraderie. The moment lingered, warm and unexpectedly comfortable. The external sensors remained clear. No sign of pursuit. The isolation, the shared tasks, the cautious conversations, they were building something. Trust, maybe. Shared experience, definitely. And the tension, gods, the tension was becoming unbearable. Every time they worked close together, repairing a flickering light panel or recalibrating the nav computer, the proximity was electric. He could feel the heat radiating from her skin, smell that spicy metallic scent, feel the pull of her resonance drawing him in. One cycle night, exhaustion finally claiming him, Reese fell asleep slumped over the navigation console while running a final systems check. He woke hours later to find himself covered with a thin, surprisingly warm blanket he didn't recognize. It shimmered faintly, adapting to his body heat. He sat up, rubbing the crick in his neck, and saw Kalen curled on the deck nearby, seemingly asleep, her tail tucked around her body, her skin glowing a soft, peaceful indigo. Had she covered him? The thought sent a strange warmth spreading through his chest, unrelated to the blanket. He watched her for a long moment, the rise and fall of her breathing, the gentle pulse of her light. She looked almost vulnerable like this. Less the dominant alien predator, more someone seeking refuge. Quietly he got up and retrieved his own thinner blanket from his bunk, carefully draping it over her. Her skin flared gold for a brief second where the fabric touched her, and a soft sigh escaped her lips, but she didn't wake. He retreated to his bunk. The image of her sleeping form burned into his mind. This fragile truce, this growing connection, it felt dangerous. More dangerous, perhaps, than the hunters pursuing her. Because this threatened the walls he'd built around his own heart, walls he'd thought were impenetrable. Lying in the dark, he could still feel the residual warmth from her blanket, still sense her presence nearby. And for the first time in a long time, the loneliness she'd spoken of felt achingly real. The ship, usually his sanctuary of solitude, felt different now. Less empty, more territory shared. They were running low on potable water. The recycler was working, but it couldn't keep up with two beings indefinitely, especially one with Kalen's slightly higher metabolic needs. "We need a top-up," Reese announced, studying the nav chart. "There's a derelict orbital station about half a jump from here. Old Zalosian outpost, apparently, abandoned decades ago." Kalen went very still. Her glow, which had been a calm cyan, flickered with violet and a touch of red. Zalosian outpost. Which system? Her breath hitched. The whispering station, it is not safe. Define not safe, Reese said warily. Pirates, lingering security systems. Ghosts, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Resonant echoes, the station remembers, Reese frowned. Resonant echoes like recordings. More, her eyes were distant, unfocused. Emotional imprints, strong events, traumas, they linger in the structures amplified by the old resonant technology. They can overwhelm. Great, space ghosts. Just what they needed. Can you handle it? He asked, studying her reaction. Her glow was still flickering erratically. We need water, Kalen. It's the only viable source within range that isn't crawling with patrols. She took a deep, slow breath, the colors on her skin gradually stabilizing, settling into a determined, steely blue. Kalen can shield, dampen the echoes, but we must be quick and stay close. Stay close, he echoed dryly. Seems to be a recurring theme. Her lips curved slightly. Perhaps the universe insists. The short jump to the station system was uneventful. The whispering station hung in the void like a skeletal metal flower, its petals, docking arms, and habitat rings, dark and lifeless. Power signatures were minimal, consistent with abandonment. Reese eased the rust bucket towards one of the less damaged docking ports. All right, he said, grabbing a toolkit and water reclamation canisters. Standard salvage procedure. Stick together, keep comms open, grab the water and get out. Don't touch anything unnecessarily. Kalen nodded, her expression grim. Her skin pulsed with a low, protective blue light. As they cycled through the station airlock, the difference was immediate. The air was stale, cold, and heavy, and underneath the silence, Reese felt something. A faint pressure against his ears, a low, almost subsonic vibration that made the hairs on his arms stand up. It wasn't Kalen's resonance. It was diffuse, ambient, and deeply unsettling. Kalen hissed softly, her hand going to her temple, stronger than anticipated. She reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. Stay within my resonance field. He didn't argue. He could feel a faint buffer around them, a pocket of relative calm created by her focused blue glow, pushing back against the oppressive weight of the station's memory. They moved through darkened corridors, their suit lights cutting sharp beams through the gloom. Dust motes danced in the light. Panels hung open, revealing dead circuitry. Here and there, faint, shimmering lights pulsed deep within the walls, the dormant resonant tech Kalen had mentioned. As they delved deeper towards the station's central water processing unit, the feeling intensified. Whispers seemed to echo at the edge of hearing, formless and indistinct. Shadows flickered in his peripheral vision. He felt a wave of inexplicable sorrow wash over him, so profound it almost buckled his knees. Gods, what was that? He gasped, leaning against a bulkhead. Kalen gripped his arm tighter, her blue glow flaring. Echo, grief, someone died here. The feeling receded, pushed back by her resonance. Focus on my field, Reese. Do not let the station touch your mind. They reached the water processing unit. It was ancient, Zalosian tech, far more elegant than standard human designs, but functional. Reese quickly connected the reclamation canisters. While the water transferred, Kalen stood rigidly beside him, scanning the gloomy chamber, her body tense, her glow a fierce protective shield. Suddenly, a section of the wall nearby flared with intense, crimson light. A wave of pure agony and rage slammed into them, far stronger than the sorrowful echo before. It hit Reese like a physical blow, stealing his breath, filling his mind with blinding pain. He cried out, stumbling back. Kalen staggered too, her blue shield flickering violently under the assault. Betrayal! The word wasn't spoken, but screamed directly into his mind, raw and full of anguish. Kalen snarled, planting her feet, her own glow intensifying, pushing back against the crimson tide. Reese, hold! He fought to clear his head, focusing on the steady pulse of Kalen's blue resonance, anchoring himself to it. The crimson wave receded slightly, but the oppressive feeling remained, thick with ancient pain. The water transfer finished. Got it, let's go, Reese yelled, disconnecting the canisters. Kalen didn't need telling twice. She grabbed his arm, practically dragging him back the way they came, her strides long and urgent. The whispers and echoes seemed to claw at them as they retreated, flashes of fear, despair, and anger washing over Kalen's shield. They practically fell back into the rust bucket's airlock, sealing the door behind them, shutting out the station's oppressive presence. Inside the ship, the silence felt clean, blessedly empty. Reese slumped against the wall, breathing heavily, the phantom pain still echoing in his mind. Kaelin leaned against the opposite bulkhead, her glow flickering with exhaustion, sweat beading on her temples. "Told you," she panted. "Not safe." Reese looked at her, truly looked at her. She had shielded him, taken the brunt of that psychic onslaught. Her fierce determination, the protective flare of her resonance. It wasn't just about territory or instinct anymore. She had actively protected him. "Yeah," he said, his voice rough. "You did." He pushed himself off the wall and walked towards her. She watched him approach, her obsidian eyes wide, her breathing still uneven. He stopped in front of her, close enough to feel the heat coming off her skin, the residual thrum of her depleted resonance. He hesitated for only a second, then reached out, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. Her skin flared gold under his touch, a brilliant, startled pulse. "Thank you, Kaelin," her breath caught. She stared at his hand on her shoulder, then slowly met his gaze. The exhaustion in her eyes was mixed with surprise and something else, something vulnerable and hopeful. The resonance between them shifted, the background hum coalescing into a clear, warm chord that vibrated through the point of contact, spreading through his entire body. It felt like coming home. In the dim light of the airlock, surrounded by the quiet hum of his ship, the tension that had been simmering between them for days finally reached its breaking point. He leaned in. Her eyes widened slightly as he closed the distance, but she didn't pull away. Her gaze dropped to his lips, then flickered back up to meet his. The air crackled, thick with anticipation and the thrumming resonance connecting them. He hesitated a fraction of an inch from her mouth, giving her a final chance to stop him. She didn't move. Her lips parted slightly, a silent invitation. He closed the gap. Her lips were cool at first, surprisingly soft beneath the initial firmness. Then warmth bloomed, a heat that mirrored the golden flare spreading across her skin under his touch. The resonance surged, a wave of pure connection washing through him, dizzying and intoxicating. It wasn't just a physical kiss. It was a merging of energies, a conversation without words. He felt echoes of her exhaustion, her relief, her surprise, and beneath it all, a deep well of longing that resonated with the loneliness she'd sensed in him. He deepened the kiss, sliding his hand from her shoulder to cup the back of her neck. Her skin was smooth, pulsing faintly with light and warmth. She made a soft sound in her throat, a low hum that vibrated against his lips, and her own hands came up, hesitantly at first, then more firmly, to rest on his waist. Her touch sent shivers down his spine, igniting a fire that chased away the last vestiges of the station's chill. Her tail, forgotten until now, brushed against his leg, then deliberately coiled around his waist, pulling him closer. This time he didn't object. He welcomed the solid, possessive weight of it, the primal statement of her claim. It felt right, necessary. He explored the seam of her lips with his tongue, a silent question. She granted him access immediately, her own tongue meeting his with a hesitant curiosity that quickly turned bold. Her taste was alien, exotic, a faint metallic tang mixed with something sweet and spicy, utterly Kaelin. The kiss became frantic, desperate, fueled by the near miss on the station, the days of simmering tension, the undeniable pull between them. He pressed her back against the bulkhead, his body flush against hers, feeling the lean strength beneath her tunic, the frantic pulse of her heart. Did she have more than one? Beating against his chest. She arched into him, her claws flexing slightly against the fabric of his flight suit, not painfully, but with an intensity that mirrored the kiss. Her resonance poured into him, overwhelming his senses, stripping away his defenses, leaving him raw and exposed. He felt her emotions as clearly as his own. Relief, desire, a fierce possessiveness that mirrored the grip of her tail, and a surprising thread of vulnerability, a fear of rejection perhaps, hidden beneath the dominant exterior. He pulled back slightly, needing air, resting his forehead against hers. They were both breathing heavily, chests rising and falling in unison. Her skin glowed brilliantly, shifting patterns of gold, rose, and deep violet swirling across her face and neck. Her eyes, dark and luminous, searched his. "Reese," she breathed, the name a reverent sigh. He couldn't speak. Words felt inadequate, clumsy. He simply tightened his grip, pulling her impossibly closer, burying his face in the curve of her neck, inhaling her unique scent. Her skin was hot against his cheek, the resonance a soothing balm after the station's psychic assault. She held him just as tightly, her arms wrapping around his back, her tail a secure anchor. They stood like that for a long moment, simply holding each other, letting the intensity of the kiss settle, allowing the connection between them solidify. The shared danger, the forced proximity, the alienness, it had all coalesced into this moment, this undeniable bond. He felt stripped bare, his carefully constructed walls crumbled to dust by the force of her presence, her resonance, her touch. He wasn't just attracted to her, he was connecting. Deeply. More deeply than he ever had with anyone. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. He lifted his head, meeting her gaze again. The playful dominance was gone, replaced by a raw honesty that stole his breath. "Kaelin," he whispered, his voice hoarse. She tilted her head, waiting. He didn't know what to say, how to articulate the maelstrom of emotions swirling inside him. So he showed her. He kissed her again, slower this time, more deliberate, pouring all his confusion, his fear, his burgeoning hope, and his undeniable desire into the touch of their lips. She responded in kind, her resonance weaving around him, accepting everything he offered and offering her own complex self in return. This wasn't just about proximity anymore. It wasn't just about territory. It was about choosing connection, about two disparate souls finding common ground in the vast, lonely void. And as her tail tightened around his waist, pulling him flush against her glowing form, Rhys knew, with terrifying certainty, that his life aboard the rust bucket would never be the same. The temporary alliance was over. Something far more profound, far more dangerous, and infinitely more compelling had begun. The journey back towards marginally safer space was filled with a new kind of tension. The air in the cockpit wasn't charged with uncertainty anymore, but with the heavy weight of unspoken promises and burgeoning intimacy. They moved around each other with a heightened awareness, touches lingering, gazes locking across the console. The kiss in the airlock had shattered the boundaries, leaving them navigating unfamiliar territory. Rhys found himself seeking her touch, craving the steady thrum of her resonance. He'd rest his hand near hers on the console, letting their fingers brush. She, in turn, seemed less inclined to territorial displays and more focused on simple contact, leaning her shoulder against his while studying a star chart, her tail resting lightly against his leg while she sat in the co-pilot's seat. It was tentative, exploratory, building a new language between them. One cycle evening, Kaelin was tracing patterns of light onto a deactivated data slate, her brow furrowed in concentration. Her skin glowed a soft mix of cyan and gold. Rhys watched her from the pilot's seat, pretending to review engine diagnostics. "What are you doing?" he asked finally. She looked up, her expression open, less guarded than he'd ever seen it. "Mapping resonance flow, how energy connects between beings." She held up the slate, showing him intricate, swirling lines of light that pulsed rhythmically. "Yours," she tapped a bright, complex pattern, "and mine." She traced a finger along a line that bridged the two patterns, making it glow brighter. Connection point, strong now. He felt a flush creep up his neck. "Yeah, well, shared trauma tends to do that." She tilted her head, a hint of her sharp smile returning. "And kissing." He couldn't help but grin back. "And kissing," he conceded. He got up, stretching, and walked over to stand beside her chair. He looked down at the shifting patterns on the slate. "So this bonding thing for Zalosians. It starts like this. Resonance, connection, kissing." Her glow deepened, violet swirling into the gold. "It can. Resonance compatibility is key. Physical intimacy deepens the pathways, aligns the fields." She hesitated, her gaze dropping back to the slate. "Full bonding is more. A conscious merging, irreversible." Irreversible. The word hung in the air between them. Rhys felt a familiar flicker of panic, the urge to retreat back behind his walls. But looking at Kaelin, at the honest vulnerability in her eyes, the steady warmth of her resonance reaching out to him, the fear felt less potent. "What does it entail?" he asked quietly. "The conscious merging." She looked up, meeting his gaze directly. "Sharing everything, memories, emotions, life force, to become interwoven, one resonant signature." She reached out, her cool fingers brushing his cheek. Her touch sent a wave of warmth through him, grounding him. "It is the ultimate trust. The ultimate vulnerability." He swallowed hard. That was intense. far beyond anything human relationships involved. Why would someone force that on another? He asked, thinking of her escape. Her expression hardened, the light around her hand turning briefly red before settling back to gold. Control, power, lineage. Some believe strong resonance should be harvested, combined, regardless of will. She pulled her hand back, clenching it slightly. Kalen chose freedom. He reached out, covering her hand with his own. Her fingers relaxed under his touch, intertwining with his. The connection flared, warm and strong. "Good choice," he murmured. They stood like that for a long moment, hands clasped, the resonant patterns swirling on the data slate before them, a visual representation of the invisible ties binding them together. Later, curled on his bunk, sleep wouldn't come. Kalen was nearby on the cargo couch, her soft indigo glow visible through the open doorway. He could feel her presence, a steady anchor in the quiet ship, irreversible, interwoven. The concepts echoed in his mind. It was terrifying, but the thought of pushing Kalen away, of returning to his solitary existence after feeling this connection, felt like cutting off a limb. He thought about the hunters. What if they found them again? Kalen was strong, capable, but they were relentless. And if they captured her, the thought of them draining her resonance, hurting her, filled him with a cold fury. He wasn't just allied with her anymore, he cared, deeply. He wanted to protect her, not just because she was on his ship, but because she was Kalen. He swung his legs off the bunk and walked silently towards the cargo bay. Kalen's eyes snapped open as he approached, her glow brightening slightly. She watched him, questioning. He didn't speak. He simply knelt beside the couch and gently took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. Her resonance surged, warm and questioning. He met her gaze in the dim light. "Hey," he whispered. "Hey, Reese," she whispered back, her voice soft. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Stay," he murmured against her skin. Not a demand, not a claim, a request, an offering. Her answering resonance wrapped around him like a warm blanket, full of surprise, tenderness, and a deep, echoing affirmation. She scooted over on the couch, making room. He hesitated only a moment before stretching out beside her, pulling the shimmering Xylosian blanket over them both. It wasn't spacious, but pressed together, her cool skin against his, her steady resonance a calming presence. It felt right. Her tail came to rest gently over his hip, a familiar weight, no longer just a claim, but a comfort. He closed his eyes, breathing in her scent, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing beside him. For the first time since she'd appeared on his ship, Reese felt completely, utterly safe. And completely, utterly terrified of what came next. Life settled into a new rhythm. Less tension, more tenderness. They functioned as a unit, Reese's piloting skills and mechanical knowledge complementing Kalen's resonance abilities and surprising strength. They jumped from system to system, staying off major routes, occasionally docking at remote outposts for essential supplies, always watchful. The hunters remained ghosts, shadows on the sensors that never materialized, but the threat kept them alert, reinforcing their reliance on each other. Intimacy grew in the quiet moments. Shared meals that ended with fingers laced together. Long watches under the stars where conversation flowed easily, sharing stories of past exploits, fears, and dreams. Kalen learned about Reese's restless youth-hopping freighters, his failed attempt at joining the fleet, his eventual choice for the lonely freedom of a scavenger pilot. He learned about the intricate social structures of Xylos, the deep connection her people had to their planet's living resonance, her own rebellious streak that chafed against ancient traditions long before the forced bonding threat. Physical intimacy deepened too, moving beyond desperate kisses to slow, exploratory touches, mapping each other's bodies, learning what brought pleasure, comfort, connection. Reese discovered the sensitive ridges behind Kalen's cranial crests, the way her glow intensified when he traced the patterns on her back, the soft vulnerability of the spot where her neck met her shoulder. She, in turn, seemed fascinated by the texture of his skin, the beat of his single heart, the way he shivered when her cool fingers brushed his sides or her tail traced patterns on his thigh. One cycle, docked at a near-deserted asteroid mining relay for fuel, Kalen found a stall selling colorful woven fabrics from a dozen different systems. She ran her fingers over a bolt of deep crimson silk, her glow shifting thoughtfully. Human fabrics, she mused. So opaque. Reese grinned, leaning against a support beam, watching her. We tend to like hiding things. Why? She asked, genuinely curious, turning to face him, the silk draped over her arm. Skin tells truth. Resonance confirms it. Why hide? Because truth is messy, Reese said, his grin fatting slightly. Complicated, sometimes dangerous. He thought of his own guarded past, the reasons he preferred solitude. Easier to keep things compartmentalized. Kaelin studied him, her obsidian eyes searching his face. The resonance between them pulsed gently. Compartments leak, Reese. She let the crimson silk fall back onto the pile and stepped closer, reaching out to trace the faint scar above his eyebrow, a memento from a bar fight years ago. Truth finds the surface, eventually. Her touch was feather-light, but it sent heat radiating through him. He leaned into it instinctively. Maybe, he conceded, his voice rough, but maybe some truths are better left buried. Her fingers stilled, then moved to cup his cheek. Her golden glow intensified, warm and steady. Not between us, she murmured. No more hiding, no more compartments. The intensity in her gaze, the unwavering certainty of her resonance stripped away his remaining defenses. She was right. Hiding wasn't an option anymore, not with her. Not when she could literally feel his truth. He covered her hand with his own, pressing her palm flat against his cheek, feeling the slight coolness of her skin, the vibrant thrum of her life force. Okay, he whispered. No more hiding. That night back on the ship, adrift in the quiet dark between stars, their intimacy reached a new depth. It wasn't driven by fear or desperation, but by conscious choice, by the trust they had painstakingly built. It was slow, deliberate, a worshipful exploration. He undressed her carefully, mesmerized by the shifting constellations of light on her bare skin, the elegant lines of her alien form. She explored him with equal reverence, her cool hands mapping the unfamiliar landscape of his human body, her resonance washing over him in waves of acceptance and desire. When they finally came together, it felt less like two separate beings joining, and more like Kaelin had described an interweaving. Her resonance flooded him, overwhelming and ecstatic, showing him glimpses of her soul, her fierce pride, her deep capacity for loyalty, her longing for true connection. He met her resonance with his own raw emotions, the loneliness he'd denied for so long, the fear of abandonment, and the fierce, protective love that had taken root in his cynical heart. Her tale wrapped around him, pulling him deeper, anchoring him as waves of pleasure and shared sensation crashed over them. Her skin glowed brilliantly against his, gold and rose and violet light pulsing in time with their joined rhythm. He felt the static she described melt away, replaced by a profound sense of peace, of rightness. This was where he belonged. This was connection. This was truth. Afterwards, they lay tangled together on his narrow bunk, her head resting on his chest, his arm around her shoulders. Her glow was a soft, contented indigo, her resonance a steady, peaceful hum intertwined with his own heartbeat. "Reese," she murmured sleepily against his skin. Your resonance sings now." He smiled, tightening his arm around her. "Yeah, what's it singing?" She nuzzled closer, her tail giving a gentle squeeze around his leg. "Home." He closed his eyes, holding her tight. Home. He hadn't realized he was looking for one until he found it unexpectedly in the arms of a glowing alien woman on a beat-up freighter lost in the void. Maybe truth wasn't so dangerous after all. Their newfound peace was shattered 3 systems later. They'd just completed a jump, emerging into the quiet periphery of an uncharted nebula, planning to lie low and scavenge for rare gases Reese could sell. Instead, the sensors screamed. 2 ships, sleek and predatory, decloaked directly off their port bow. Heavy energy signatures flared, weapons charging. "Hunters!" Reese snapped, slamming his hands onto the controls, throwing the rust bucket into a hard, evasive dive. Kaelin was beside him instantly, her skin flashing warning red, her hands flying over the auxiliary controls, boosting shields, rerouting power. "Fast," she confirmed, her voice tight. "Zalosian design modified. They knew we were coming here." "How?" Reese grunted, dodging laser fire that sizzled past the viewport. "Tracker, someone talk." "Doesn't matter now, evasion." Kaelin's resonance spiked. a focused wave of energy that seemed to momentarily interfere with the enemy targeting lock's missile trajectories wavered. Resonant jamming, Reese yelled over the weapon's fire impacting the shields. Short range only, buys seconds. The rust bucket groaned under the assault. Shields were bleeding energy fast. They were outgunned and outmaneuvered. Can't outrun them, can't outfight them. Reese assessed grimly, pulling the ship into a tight spin around a dense gas pocket. Any bright ideas? Kalen's eyes scanned the tactical display, her glow shifting to a determined, almost incandescent violet. The nebula, dense graviton sheer fields inside, dangerous, could tear the ship apart. Or hide us, Reese finished her thought. Worth the risk, she met his gaze, her expression fierce. Together, yes, he nodded sharply. Hold on. He plunged the rust bucket directly into the swirling, turbulent clouds of the nebula. Visibility dropped to zero. The ship bucked and shuddered violently as graviton currents ripped at the hull. Alarms shrieked, red lights flashing everywhere. Structural integrity failing, Kalen shouted, fighting the controls alongside him. Shields down to 12%. Focus resonance, Reese yelled back, wrestling the flight stick. Try to stabilize the immediate field around us. Kalen closed her eyes, her hands hovering over the console. Her violet glow intensified, pouring outwards, surrounding the ship in a shimmering bubble of resonant energy. Reese felt it, a buffer against the worst of the turbulence, a calming wave amidst the chaos. The ship stopped shaking quite so violently, though the stress alarms continued to blare. Through a momentary thinning of the gas clouds, Reese saw one of the hunter ships pursuing them into the nebula. The other held back, cautious. One followed. He's crazy. Or desperate, Kalen gritted out, sweat beading on her brow, her glow pulsing with the effort of maintaining the resonant shield. The hunter ship fired again, a lucky shot slipping through Kalen's buffer and impacting their already damaged port engine. The rust bucket listed sharply, losing power. Engine hit, we're losing thrust. Reese fought the controls, trying to compensate. They were spiraling deeper into the nebula's core, towards the most intense sheer fields. The hunter ship closed in, weapons hot. Kalen, Reese yelled, desperation clawing at him. I can't hold it. Kalen opened her eyes. They glowed with fierce determination. Then we don't run. She reached across the console, placing one hand flat against his chest, right over his heart. Her other hand rested on the weapon's control panel. Resonance surged through the contact point, raw power, fierce love, unwavering resolve. Trust me, Reese. He met her gaze, saw the certainty there, felt the absolute conviction in her resonance. There was no hesitation. Always. Kalen nodded once. She closed her eyes again, but this time her resonance didn't just shield, it reached out, coalescing, shaping the unstable energies of the nebula around them. The hunter ship, sensing victory, surged forward, weapons ready for the killing blow. Suddenly, the space around the rust bucket warped. Graviton currents, focused by Kalen's will, twisted and converged. The hunter ship, caught completely off guard, flew directly into a newly formed localized shear vortex. Reese watched on the monitor, stunned, as the sleek vessel was ripped apart, metal screaming, energy core detonating in a silent, brilliant flash. The shockwave buffeted the rust bucket, but Kalen's shield held, absorbing the worst of it. Then silence. The pursuing ship was gone. The other hunter, witnessing the destruction, had already turned tail and jumped away. Kalen slumped back in her seat, her glow dimming rapidly, her breathing ragged. The resonant shield dissolved. Reese immediately cut power to non-essentials, checking their status. The port engine was offline, hull integrity was compromised, but they were alive, floating dead in space inside a nebula, but alive. He turned to Kalen, reaching out, gently touching her cheek. Her skin was cool, clammy. Kalen, you okay? She opened her eyes, managing a weak smile. Resonance depleted. Need rest. She leaned into his touch, her eyes drifting closed again. He gently unstrapped her and lifted her into his arms. She felt terrifyingly light. He carried her out of the cockpit, back towards his bunk, their bunk now. He laid her down carefully, pulling the blankets over her. Her breathing was shallow, her glow almost completely faded. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped him. He knelt beside the bunk, taking her hand, trying to push his own warmth, his own energy, towards her through their connection. Just rest, he whispered. I'll fix the ship. I'll get us out of here. Just rest, Kalen. He stayed there for a long time, holding her hand, watching the faint, flickering vestiges of light under her skin, pouring every ounce of his love and worry into the resonant bond between them, praying it was enough.